Good afternoon, YouTube. So I have one of these tire inflators, and it's got one of these pressure gauge that stick out. It's not terribly accurate, but I do find this reasonably handy, and lately I've been having trouble that this thing just doesn't seal up against your valve stem. You go to push this down on your valve stem and it leaks air out of the back side of the chuck. So this is like a two-sided tire chuck. So like I say, this used to work pretty good, but now it really leaks. So I have pulled it apart. You need something like a thin piece of metal to get in here. It's kind of like a screwdriver slot, but it's split. And you can screw these ends out here. There's a little rubber washer or grommet in here. I can get it out. It's a tight fit. Yeah, so anyway, there's a little rubber washer in there, and then if you flip it over, there's two little pins. They kind of look like pop rivets almost, and the same thing on the other end. There's the screw top and a rubber grommet in there. Right in the middle is an air passage. My pick is sticking into that little air passage in the center, and it took me a while to figure out how this thing works. What you have are these two pins. I was surprised that there were two separate pins like this. I would have thought it would be one solid one. Show you how this works here. You can't see it in place, of course, but these things sit inside the foot of the tire chuck, and there's a little gap in between these, and that's where the air passage is. So when you hit the air valve on the inflator, the air goes into the center. Those two pins push apart, and then they seal up against this rubber washer on the inside, and that's your air seal. So yeah, you've got the air pressure pushing against the head of this pin, holding against the seal, and then if you bring this down onto your tire valve, you've got the valve core in there, and that valve core pushes the pin off of the rubber, which opens up and lets air flow out, and you push down until the valve stem seals against the rubber on the other side. There's only so much room in there, and at some point the bottom pin gets pushed against the top one. The top side here is being pushed in hard against the rubber, and then the bottom one is pushing against the top one. And then that opens that gap there, and then this is sealing up there. So these washers actually seal on both sides, and you can probably see how they've gotten chewed up there in the middle. And like, in fact, this one is torn. You can see where it's like the rubber is actually torn right there. So I was like, oh man, where do you get new washers like that? They probably do make rebuild kits for these. And I mean, you could go out and buy a new one of these. They're not that expensive, but one of the products we make air hose kits for tire inflation and deflation. So yeah, this is one of the tire chucks we use. This is what's called the Euro style chuck, and it's a self-clamping one. You put it on your valve stem like that, and then you let go of that spring-loaded handle and it grabs. We use quite a few of these, and these things, they're set up with 1/4-inch pipe thread, and they come with these little rubber grommets or washers inside. Apparently the purpose of these is if you use this on a straight pipe thread, the threads don't seal, so they put a rubber washer in there to seal up on straight pipe threads. Now the threads on the fittings we use are NPT, pipe thread tapered, and all you need to do is put the Teflon tape on the threads, screw this down, and it seals up just like a water pipe. We used to leave these washers in there, but we found that sometimes that washer will get twisted up in here and it plugs up the hole, and that blocks your airflow, or at least severely limits the airflow through here. So we've been taking these out every time we build an air hose, and I've got a whole bunch of them. This is just one box of these, and I saved these. Wasn't sure what they were good for, or if there was a use for them, but they looked like they might be useful for something. And when I pulled one of these out, it's like, you know what those are? That's probably what they used right there. I mean, it's the same outside, same inside. It's a little bit thicker, but I'm thinking these were probably a little bit thicker originally, and they've just compressed over the years. This thing's probably 25, 30 years old. So, for free, I am able to repair this. Now what I found was you need to put this top side in. It's hard to get this one in because you're kind of working down like that. So what I found is put the rubber washer in there and then tighten this side down all the way, and then you drop your pins in, one facing down, one facing up, and then you take your other grommet and you got to get it pushed in all the way so that you can get the thread started. Let's see if I can get that going. Yeah, it's just much easier to work on this side. But let's see if I can tighten that up. Figuring out how this works also explains a problem I had once, because one time I was trying to fill my tire. I'd just changed tires and I'd left the valve core out, and I couldn't get this thing to work. It wouldn't fill the tire up without the valve core, and now that I see how it works, that pin presses the valve core in to let air in, but the valve core pushes that pin down to let the air in here escape. So you actually need both things here. You've got to have something to push that pin down, and you've got to have something to push that pin down, and they basically push each other down. Now, without any air pressure, you don't really feel anything. It's kind of a weird feeling. It's just like this doesn't do anything. But let me hook up my air compressor here. So here we go. I've got the air hose hooked up. If I hit the air lever, you heard how it leaked for a little bit, and now it doesn't leak. It's holding air. Yeah, so here I have a valve stem just into the top of the bench here. So you can see now, like there's my air compressor. It's showing like a little over 70 pounds. Now when I push this on, it let the air out. While this is down, this side is hard. Yes, that's a really clever little device. It's so simple. It all works off of air pressure, because I always wondered how this thing could work. You see how those pins are loose, but yet if you put a little air pressure, now you can see how that thing is in there solid. And if you just push a little bit, yeah. So in the past, I've worked with chucks like this. These are just single-sided versions of this thing. But these are a little bit different because there's the pin that pushes down the valve core, but you're only sealing against this outside surface there. So the outside rubber piece tends to get worn out like this. So what I've done with these is you can spin this top off, flip the rubber piece upside down, and then you kind of get a nice fresh face. So this is a plugged valve stem, so this shouldn't leak any air. And there you go, it holds. It's a pretty neat little gadget, and I've now fixed this, and it didn't cost anything. I'm really glad I saved all these things, because those are just perfect. In fact, that's probably the same piece that fits in all of these. I have a couple of these, I think, that are fairly worn out. Just proves that holding on to things that look like they might be useful is a pretty good idea. So if there's interest, I'll put a link to these on my YouTube webpage. So I've got a YouTube section on my website, which you can find the link in the video description, and I'll put a link to order some of these. Just charge a nominal amount to cover shipping and handling, and we can get some of these out to you. And if you need like 2 of them, to fix one of these, I can probably set you up. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that repair, and if you have any questions, post up in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.